We are starting with MP Howland for the first 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Simser, for your testimony today. I wanted to ask you, you said that Canada is a playground for money laundering. I would say that after 9 years of this government, we're hearing the same thing about foreign interference. I wanted to know, are you concerned at all that foreign actors are using financial crimes such as money laundering in Canada right now as a way to interfere in Canada's financial institutions and within our economy?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, I'm concerned in two ways. One is that the Chinese government put currency controls a few years ago. It's created this demand for Canadian money. So it's not necessarily that the government as a foreign actor is here, but they're encouraging people that, for example, within China produce precursor chemicals. They go to the cartels and they come up onto our streets as fentanyl. The other place, which is not so much a money laundering issue, but is a very concerning issue, is cybercrime. And so we have state actors, we have North Korea, we have China, Iran, and Russia, although Russia does it a little differently. So instead of a criminal who wants to sort of smash and grab and do ransomware and get their money out quickly, these are patient and persistent and long-term adversaries, and they're very, very concerning as well.
Right. Thank you. With that, since we're talking about money laundering, Chair, I'd like to move a motion that I had on notice that given the unprecedented $3 billion fine on TD by the U.S. Department of Justice, and given the criminal activity that this money laundering fuels has likely carried in Canada, the U.S. has named Canada as a major money laundering country, and Canada has developed an international reputation for ease of money laundering and has a lack of enforcement. The committee invite Bharat Masrani, Chief Executive Officer of the TD Bank, the Superintendent of OSFI, the Minister of Finance, Bank of Canada officials responsible for the Financial Crimes Risk Management Program, and FinTrack, and that these hearings happen in addition to the regularly scheduled committee work plan, and that in order to accommodate these witnesses, regular committee meetings be extended by 1 hour. This is a big issue that the Prime Minister has said this is an issue, and I was glad to see my colleague, Mr. Davies, raise this in the House of Commons as well just yesterday. And we know that the Liberals have ignored this issue of money laundering. That's why it continues to happen. Minister Freeland sent this committee a letter last year in November of 2023, asking this committee to do the statutory 5-year review of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act. It's now October 2024, and one has not yet been started. In the meantime, recommendations from the Cullen Commission in BC have been ignored. FinTrack has no teeth when it comes to fighting money laundering. The Liberals are more focused on making band-aid solutions to the Act in different budgets. They failed to crack down on organized crime and drug cartels, especially as these criminals launder the money they get from thefts and extortions through Canadian financial institutions, casinos, and real estate. Over $110 billion is laundered in Canada every single year. Money laundering is serious and a systemic criminal issue that is plaguing Canada and our financial and real estate sectors. We see TD Bank in the U.S. commit the largest money laundering scheme in the U.S. history. TD Bank is the 10th largest bank in the U.S. and second largest in Canada. There's no way that money laundering at TD is just an isolated incident that happened in the U.S. And there's no way that it would stop just at the border. Canada is known internationally, from exactly what we heard today, for how easy it is in Canada to launder money. The U.S. State Department listed Canada in 2019 as a major country of concern when it comes to money laundering. This motion is not to attack any specific institution, but to highlight that the system is broken. Bad actors can operate inside financial institutions without anyone stopping them. The government turned a blind eye to these crimes. FinTrack has been ineffective in stopping money laundering, and since 2015, the total number of convictions for money laundering offenses have declined, and so has money laundering investigations, but the amount of money laundering being done has not. It just shows how ineffective the system is here. Drug cartels operate with immunity. laundering money through real estate, driving up house prices for Canadians, organized crime runs, smuggling rings, and commits car thefts, then launders the proceeds of those crimes in Canada. And this committee cannot even do a 5-year review of the act on time. When officials spoke to this committee in February, that Canada's rating on money laundering with the Global Financial Action Task Force in 2021 was lowered. The next review takes place in 2025. The damning TD money laundering scandal in the US should show the urgency for every member in this place to addressing money laundering crimes and put an end to Canada's status as a major money laundering country of concern. Canadians should be able to trust that criminals are not taking advantage of the financial institutions where we keep our savings, invest, and rely on for loans and mortgages. Oversight in Canada must be improved. Regulators must be given teeth to actually hold institutions and criminals accountable for money laundering and financial crimes. More responsibility should be expected from financial institutions. Penalties and fines should be painful and reflect the seriousness of the crimes committed. It shouldn't be chump change or a slap on the wrist to the people that are committing it. And penalties should be a deterrent against negligence or criminal activity. I realize that I'm asking to all extend the time, but we are very open, since this is a very serious issue, to accommodating that to a certain day, like if it's just on Tuesdays until we get it done. So I'll leave it there. And I hope that we can get to a vote quickly on this, on such a serious issue.
Okay, thank you, MP Hallen. I do have a list started. I've got MP Samari, MP Davies.
Oui. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, pour...
Thank you, Chair. Just to inform the colleagues of the committee that I am in favor of a subject that is so important. The American justice system is really proven that there was a catastrophic situation for TD. Our colleague Jazz has brought up something that is extremely important. If there are people who have to take a flight tonight and are not available, perhaps we can find another time where we can have a thorough discussion of this matter. I'm 100% in support of it. It's important. Thank you,
Ben Diane.
Thank you. Well, in a word, I very much agree with the substance of the motion. I agree with Mr. Hallen that this is an important issue. As he kindly pointed out, I raised this matter in the House yesterday. To my knowledge, it's the first time anyone has raised the issue of the TD Bank, a $3 billion fine in the House of Commons. What I think is important to note, though, is that we've already scheduled a study on anti-money laundering in January. We did that after extensive discussions among everybody at this table, including the Conservatives, a few weeks ago. And they prioritized this study on CRA as the next study to come after this one. So for anybody who's watching, we've established the committee's business for the next 3 months. It's the pre-budget hearings, which we're doing now. Right after that, we would move into the CRA hearing, which is a study proposed by a Conservative colleague and I believe by Monsieur Samari. We agreed to that. Then we agreed that we wanted to try to issue a report highlighting and summarizing all of the excellent ideas we're hearing in the pre-budget hearings before Christmas. And then we would get to anti-money laundering in the very first meeting coming back in January. Now, at the time that we discussed that, the issue of the TD money laundering issue was already in the media. I'm not sure that the $3 billion fine had been announced yet, but it was certainly there. And anti-money laundering has been on our agenda and our radar as a very serious issue, as Mr. Hallen eloquently pointed out. The real question is do we now want to revisit that and add time to this committee meeting? We set Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 to 5:30. Adding extra time to that is a disruption to the well-established schedule of this committee, and as well as it was not a proposal made by anybody a couple of weeks ago. So yes, I agree we need to get to it. This is a very important issue. I think it's been with us a long time. I think some of the testimony today has indicated this has been an entrenched problem. I think Mr. Hallen himself says it's been going on for 9 years. It's been going on for longer than that. but it's been going on. So I would say this is a very important issue, but I don't think it's urgent. I think that we can deal with it when we begin the study in January. I am concerned about starting to tack on ad hoc witnesses after regular pre-budget hearing committee meetings on this subject now in October and in November, and without the proper context and focus and concentration, and then pick up evidence in February. For example, the first witnesses I'd want to hear from is I'd want to hear from FinTrack, I'd want to hear from OFSI, I'd want to hear from the law enforcement agencies to get an idea of what actually is the context in which this is occurring. I wouldn't want to call TD Bank first. They're the subject of the issue. I wouldn't know what to ask them yet. I want to be fully briefed and informed on what the legal and prosecutorial situation. I learned more about it from Mr. Simser today than I've learned at all. I want to hear more of that. So I'd like to take an organized, concentrated, rational approach to the subject that would focus entirely on this issue with no other distractions. And the way to do that is to stick with what we've already agreed to, which is dealing with the anti-money laundering study that we've already scheduled for January. In lieu of that, what I would be propose is to let the Conservatives swap the CRA study that they decided they wanted before the anti-money laundering study, and they could switch it. So I'm happy to move up anti-money laundering, and we could deal with that immediately after we finish our pre-budget hearings, which will happen in a matter of a few weeks. I'm happy to do that if the Conservatives believe that it's a more important priority than their study on CRA. But I'm not in favor of adding an hour to this meeting. My final point is, this is Western alienation is a real thing. For those of us who live in British Columbia, sitting till 6 o'clock on a Thursday or 6:30 means we don't go home Thursday night. That means we go home Fridays. And for those of you that come from Central Canada or can get home, that doesn't matter to you. You can be home Thursday night, but we don't get home until Friday. And if we turn around on Sunday, we don't get to spend as much time in our constituencies where I want to be hearing from the people in my riding about what's important to them. So, for that reason, I'm in favor of the substance of the motion. I think it's a great idea. I want to thank Mr. Allen for bringing it forward, but the scheduling of it, I don't think is appropriate.
Thank you, MP Davies. I've got PS Bendayan next, and then I've got MP Chambers, I believe. Yes, MP Chambers? You were on it on the list? Or
Yes,
no?
please.
Okay, but I've got PS Bendayan and then yourself. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I regret and would like to open with my regrets to the witnesses who've made themselves available to the committee and for whom I'm sure it's very frustrating to sit through a lengthy debate on a subject that is not the pre-budget consultations that you prepared for. Mr. Halan, you've introduced your motion and with a lengthy introduction that I don't think I will rebut word for word, other than to say that we had proposed to strengthen enforcement. We had proposed to strengthen FinTrack. We had money on the table to finance the Canada Financial Crimes Agency, and the list goes on. And when that was before this committee, when those proposals were before the Finance Committee, the Conservative members filibustered for 20 plus hours. I would also note that it was the government that suggested and included in the programming motion the anti-money laundering review that we will be undertaking, and I look forward to that study. And I would agree with the suggestion that my colleague, Mr. Davies, has just now proposed to extend that study. We are open on the government side to extending it by 2 or 3 meetings, depending on the list of witnesses that we agree to. I, for one, had questions for the witnesses that are still here. I could prepare amendments to this motion. I think, as everybody realizes around this table, there is agreement of a majority of members between Mr. Davies and colleagues on the government side. And so if you would like, and if it is the will of the committee, I can prepare those amendments and submit them to the clerk before the end of the meeting, hopefully today, and we can continue with questions. Alternatively, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to go through the amendments now. It does appear to me, therefore, that we will not get back to witness questioning. Mr. Speaker, I could read them into, Mr. Chair, I could read them into the record if you like. But I would also like to point out that I am in agreement with my colleague opposite regarding the importance of listening first and foremost to OSFI as well as Bank of Canada officials.
P.S. Bendayan, just on the amendments, you're proposing these amendments, yes?
Yes, I'm happy. Also, I recognize that there is a speaking list, and I'm not sure if my colleague, Mr. St. Marie. I'm not sure if my colleague, Mr. St. Marie, wants to speak to the fact that something that was quite important to him, notamment, Monsieur St. Marie, c'était très.
Something that was very important for you to proceed with the study on the CRA and to hear the Minister of National Revenue. So what I suggest, we've worked hard all together in large part because we have met the requests of colleagues from all sides, and it is in that way that we've been able to achieve things, and we have a motion with respect to our calendar for the coming weeks and months. I think it's important to continue as we decided beforehand, but given the hour, Chair, it's 5:28. I move that we adjourn the debate on the motion before us.
Debate on the motion. So, Clerk?
The question is, shall the debate be now adjourned on the motion of Mr. Halan? I'll start with Mr. Baker.
In favor.
Ms. Zarowitz?
In favor.
Mr. Sorbera?
In favor.
Ms. Thompson?
In favor.
Ms. Bandian?
In favor.
Mr. Chambers?
I think I'm going to be against this one.
Mr. Halan?
Against.
Mr. Kelly? Mr. Morantz?
Against.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
Contre.
Mr. Davies?
En favor.
Yes pour 6, nays contre 5.
Okay, so we've adjourned debate on the motion.